Secretary, of course, the Doc Brown Committee, Andy Sr., Elliot Adams, and Craig Vantresco for assisting with the article I did with the Syncopated Times, Brad Finch for his expertise in what I call cryptology, Nanette Rod for expertise in astounding research on Doc Brown, Andrea Hatfield for her research on Doc's birth and early years, John McGraw for his exceptional generosity, and Macy Bulgamore at Buttonwood Art Space, Kevin Sanders and Pat Ireland for their authentic string ragtime, and for all the 39 donors who made this a reality. Doc was, a little bit about Doc. Doc was born as a slave on the Marmaduke estate at Arrowrack, which is west of Columbia. He delivered newspapers in Marshall. Moved to Kansas City around 1888, worked as a cook and had other jobs, even pumped the organ of the church. He began cakewalking at some point, but the dates he gives conflict. He says 1880, sometimes 1861. He was clearly good at it. He entered many contests, won many, including medals. And he won the first cakewalk here in Kansas City in 1892. He won at Madison Square Garden in 1893. And in 1898, he challenged one of the Vanderbilts, Willie Vanderbilt, to a cakewalk. Willie took the cake New Year's Eve in New York, and Doc was having none of it. He was always willing to defend his title, and I think it would be really great if we could turn up those medals. Whatever happened to them, we don't know. He had dozens of titles and nicknames, with a lot of them inflated, as they often were. My favorite is Cakewalk Champion of the Universe, and I've always wondered how they did the cakewalk in Alpha Centauri. In 1896, his portrait was painted by Millard C. Hayward, and after long neglect and restoration, it now hangs in the Kansas City Museum. In 1897, he was filmed by George Curtis, cakewalking in the streets of Kansas City, and this makes him one of the earliest black performers to be captured on film, and I believe the second cakewalker to be filmed. The Curtis films were shown at the Orpheum twice in 1899. Tragically, the film deteriorated over the decades and we lost it, but I'm hoping other prints may surface and it can be rediscovered. Doc also strutted in Sedalia in 1898, which is now famous for the home of classic ragtime, Scott Joplin and his cohorts, and I bet that Scott Joplin was there along with Arthur Marshall and Scott Hayden. Local composer Charles L. Johnson composed a piece commemorating Doc in 1899, and it had its premiere here on February 12th by the Burt James Band. Johnson said it was his first hit. It went on sale at that time for just 15 cents. The going rate at that time was 50 cents. So Doc was still cakewalking in 1904, a year before his death. He died in 1905 on February 28th. There was a collection taking up to bury him. He didn't have any money. I don't think there ever was a headstone, so he has one now. And also from my friend Dennis Pash, who used to play with Kevin and Pat, the Etc. String Band, their wonderful string ragtime. He says, he couldn't be with us, but he says, as the work of Nanette has shown, Doc Brown was a better known and more widely traveled person than any of us realized. The many local newspapers that appeared suggest a genuine affection on the part of the Kansas City community at the time. It's about time that he received his just due with contemporary Kansas City and the whole world. I anxiously await an official publication of Nanette's work, and I wish I could be there. Regards to everybody involved. A few things about the cakewalk, because a lot of people always ask, what's a cakewalk? I've never heard of it, or they've heard the expression, that takes the cake. That's where it comes from. It was a competition dance and a promenade going back to plantation days. It peaked in the late 19th century when the music had evolved into the first form of ragtime music. It couldn't be contained, and it spread beyond American borders. The international popularity of the cakewalk was facilitated by two famous people. Thomas Edison sent phonographs to the crown heads of Europe and other countries, and when a writer asked him what was their favorite music, he asserted American ragtime. In 1900, John Philip Sousa began the first of his European tours, and he brought the cakewalk to the continent. The royalty fell in love with it and danced it in their ballrooms. What the royals did, the people imitated. So the dance had gone from the plantation to high society. And aside from Vanderbilt, Teddy Roosevelt also did the cakewalk momentously in the White House Christmas Day in 1901. It faded around 1904, 1905, somewhere in there, but it was revived in 1915, and it was still being danced in vaudeville in the 1920s. There were also high walks. Never hear of those. And they were active parallel to the cakewalk coming in the late 1890s. And the prize, of course, was a grand pie. In spite of its popularity, not everybody was enthralled with cakewalks in ragtime. There were plenty of distractors. They thought that ragtime and the cakewalk were degrading. So I'm going to turn the program over now to Pat and Kevin, and they're going to play some period cakewalk music for us.